So first, Nick, as you've got your name on the front, you're almost a bit of a skinhead today in that you've got shortish hair, but I mean, were you ever a proper skinhead? You know what I mean?
Well, it depends what you mean by a proper skinhead. That's rather open to debate, isn't it? I suppose, yes, I had short hair, and I would say I was a skinhead once asked.
Yeah, but what sort of period was this?
About 2 years ago.
I say, you're not, how old are you now? Not really.
24.
Now, you're a little bit different, Jim, aren't you? Because you don't look at all like a skinhead today, but I mean, were you a skinhead?
From about 69 till 70 I was, and then I was a suede head for a bit, and then a smoothie. And,
we'll come back to you, obviously. Jim's all sort of treasure house of information about the sort of skinhead culture. We'll come back to you in a minute and talk about that area. But first, Nick, why then did you get involved in the idea of writing a book about skinheads? To be a skinhead is one thing.
Well, I didn't start by writing a book about them. I was a skinhead for about a year, I suppose, before I had even any idea of writing a book. And I suppose because I was a skinhead, I was also a photographer. It was really I started taking photographs of my friends. That's how it started.
When you say you're a photographer, do you mean professionally you're a photographer?
Yes, I earn my living through photography.
Yeah. Well, that's how you started, but I mean the skinhead thing is there's a sort of symbolic quality about skinheads, isn't there? I just saw, this was a couple of weeks ago, New Statesman, that Claire Bretéche lady who does a sort of comic strip in there. The first couple of frames of the comic strip is the sort of trendy couple sitting on the sofa, and one of them says to the other, I mean, what do these skins want? And the other one says, they're just anti-everything. And the other one says, because they're always like trendy lefty people in these cartoons, the other one says, so we were anti too. We've always been anti. They couldn't be more anti than us. And the other one says, yeah, but they're anti-us as well. I mean, society does seem to see skinheads as just the all-purpose kind, almost like a cancer in society. Like, they're even anti the people who are anti, they're even anti the rebels, the anti-anarchists.
John, I think you've got to stop here, because when you talk about skinheads, you're talking about so many different things. I mean, you're talking, the skinheads of the 60s, or what Jim was involved in, is one thing. And what you're talking about now, in 1982, is something completely different. When I was a skinhead in 1978, 1979, it was also different. So to just talk about skinheads rather misses the point.
Well, go on, tell us what is the point then. I mean, what I was saying, what I've got to lead on from the New Statesman cartoon, was society, whether it's informed society, middle-class people, trendy people, your average ordinary chap on the street, they see them as a gang to be feared. They see people with shaved heads coming down the street, the doctor. Now, what's wrong with that then?
Well, that's just a stereotype, and that's a completely absurd stereotype, which is brought about by the media. They say, oh, well, because he's got a bald head, and because he's got boots, and because he's got, I don't know, because he's a working-class accent, he must be violent.
Yeah, but there is a bit more to it than that, isn't it? I mean, you know, there is also a skinhead type of mentality, or we think there is.
But yes, but that's very varied. I mean, there are lots of different sorts of skinheads, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, you're trying to tell us that, but except they all look the same. They go
No, they don't all look the same. That's just the point. I mean, look through the fashion pages that Jim did. They don't all look the same. It's not all about shaved heads and boots.
The difference is now, when it started, kids that were fashionable would take up on it, and as soon as it caught on with the thugs and the yobs, they drop it and go into something else, but a few months later the yobs would be behind them. So it just had a life cycle that died out within, well, 3-4 years. I mean, when I was 18...
You're talking about what, the earliest skinheads?
Yeah, the only ones, the imitators now, aren't they?
Well, I don't know, you're telling
It's
me
revival.
this, because like most people, as I say, I've been to a skinhead club just to see what they were like, and I didn't get beaten up, and I quite enjoyed myself, actually. But on the other, that was quite recently. But on the other hand, most people, even people in the rock business, don't go down there a great deal, don't seek them out a great deal, because they've got this feeling they're a savage tribe, and you don't get involved because you won't get hurt.
We can only tell you from our experiences. Yeah. I was never beaten up when I was a skinhead, I was never threatened, and it was never particularly hostile. I mean, the closest I came to having a fight was with some SWP skinheads from Ladbroke Grove.
Social workers skinheads. That's right, I'll come on to all that in a minute, because there's a sort of political standpoint, another stereotype we put on as well. But Jim, let's get back to the earliest days then, because obviously most people aren't aware. You're talking like an old Ted, really, aren't you? You say,
well, it's exactly the same.
Kids today, they know rockabilly, forget it.
It's the same thing, you have to be, you're snobbish about it, really. Because you just see kids, and all you can see is the detail. Oh, it's got it wrong. It's slipped up there, whereas the kid, and to everybody else who doesn't know, is just a skinhead. I mean, they can't help it. And
but to be fair, I mean, that skinhead thing, when it first came on, as far as I can remember, towards, what, the late 60s, when I was first aware of skinheads getting in the papers and seeing them around in 2s and 3s in the streets, was there an original skinhead uniform like you knew the Teds when I first saw them in the 50s and so on?
Well, it developed straight out of mods, and mods split up, went all different directions, ran its course. And then, I mean, early skinheads didn't have the name, they were just looked upon as mods with extra short hair and shorter trousers.
What then is the point of the book? Are you just trying to document it and
certainly,
say, like, to innocent
that is certainly what the point of the book is. We try to document it once and for all. We try to get our facts as correct as possible, which is very hard. Because what Jim says, he was in one place. If you try a skinhead from Dundee, he'll give you a completely different version of it. And what I tried to do was get the most representative version from going all over the place, from Brighton to Bournemouth to Dundee to everywhere, to try and find out the whole of the story. Because a lot of people think that skinhead started in the East End. Now, if you meet other skinheads, they'll tell you it started in Plymouth and Portsmouth and Liverpool, places like that. So there's a whole controversy of how it started.
It usually stemmed from London, because they could get clothes that you couldn't get other places.
Yeah. And also there was a stronger sort of, I suppose, things like the records, the ska records and things like that.
Oh yeah, it was...
But you see, they were coming into the ports like Liverpool, so...
Well, Okay, so the book sort of catalogues and gives us an idea of the scope of the skinhead movement, fine. But does it in any way try and combat, or should it combat, the generally held stereotype, whether it's, as I say, the highest in the land or the lowest in the land, they see the skinheads as right-wing, racist, violent. That's what we think
It does combat simply because it states that there are other sorts of skinheads. The thing is,
you're not denying that that is quite a strong theme going through the skinhead
but that's a very easy stereotype to reproduce, isn't it? And to keep going. Sells newspapers. Does a very good job.
Yeah, but you're not saying that it doesn't exist.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
It's more dominant.
Hold on, John. What I'm saying is it does exist, but also that's not the whole story. And to take that part of it and make that the whole story is wrong.
But the way you said something about Socialist Workers' Party skins,
yes.
you were talking about, surely you must know. What I'm saying is they must be the exception. Because I've seen groups of skins together. You see them on the terraces at football matches jumping about and fighting. It's all that Union Jack thing. In many ways, of course, they're simply being very open and unsubtle about certain ideas that you could hear expressed by members of Parliament from the right wing. In that, when I went along to this, I went along to see Angela Rippon's Bum, which was a sort of skinhead oi band. Yeah. See them perform with a couple of other bands, and they came on. It's the first time I've been in a rock club and would hear, for instance, them doing a pro-Falklands song.
Angela Rippon's Bum?
Yes, that's the name of the band.
Is it?
Yeah, that's a little bit more skinhead history for you, Angela Rippon's Bum. I think they've changed their name now because they find it a little bit unacceptable. Yeah, but you see, they did a song about the Falklands with a bit of drum beat and so on. And but basically, it was about bashing foreigners, like Britain's never shall be slaves. But that in a different form is what you can hear Mrs. Thatcher saying in a different form. That's
right, but you ask them what they think of Mrs. Thatcher and you won't get a very pleasant response.
Well, that seems to be, you're painting the picture now, Skinner, as sort of all-purpose ratbags that are just sort of protest, street protest is what it is, which makes them a rather dangerous force for anybody to harness.
No, I mean, I don't think so anymore.
Well,
anybody involved
as if they're human guard dogs, you know.
No, I don't think they're any more that way than any other people involved in youth culture. You look at punks or you look at rockabillys or whatever. They're just the same sort of people, and you quite often find that a kid will drift from mod to skinhead to punk or whatever in and out of different youth cults. That's part of the fun, isn't it, when it comes down to it being a reject from society, isn't it?
The Angela Rippon's Bum gig, I was very much aware of this. They moved as a herd kind of thing. You know, they weren't threatening to me. I mean, they weren't threatening to anybody as far as I could see. But you could see the energy and the violence sort of potentially under the surface. I'm not blaming them for it. I think it's perfectly reasonable. They got things like Tilbury skins and so on, Spartans and all these sort of things on their T-shirt. But they would also get up and just make token gestures against society. They'd shout something, you know, something obscene or something over the mic, get a bit of a cheer, or they'd have some crack about packies and so on. I mean, you can't say that there isn't that racist thing.
No, I'm not trying to, John.
It is pretty strong. And also, you could see them, the danger almost, as soon as somebody actually started to play the Okie Kokie, which was a real sort of good old East End bit of sort of phony working class culture, and then they start to dance, but they don't dance the Okie Kokie, they do what they do for everything else, which they do in a fight. They just all, blokes on their own, no girls involved, they just pile up in the middle of the floor like a big scrum. They just hurl themselves on top of each other. But you know, you can't say that isn't there, that there are skinners who are at home doing macrame or something like that, or watercolours. That's what I'm saying.
No, I agree. There are those sort of skinheads that you described, and there are a lot of them now. The oi thing's caught on very, very strongly.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you see, there's Jim on one side saying it's something I did as a lad. I've grown out of it. That's boys will be boys almost, and why not? There's nothing wrong with that. He's not dismissing it. But then I see it from time to time. People talk to me about it as if it is a way of life. I'll never give up being a skin. You've got a letter in your book, for instance, like, what would I do if I had to give up being a skin? You know, I'll cut my throat or grow a fringe, jokingly, is what the bloke says. But I mean, isn't there that? Don't you find that?
That's how you feel, though, when you're that age.
Well, I mean, you are
Jim putting it down again, Nick.
No, the thing is, you do feel that way. You do feel, oh, you know, I've discovered, you know, the way to live and everything else. Like the mods thought they were, you know, thought they were the elite. It's that sort of feeling. You discovered the actual way to crack it, and all your mates. But the thing is, you can't dismiss it once you've had it tattooed across your face. Yeah. Once you're stuck with it, you have to adopt a lifestyle. The other thing that I find, or I found because I was wearing the clothes for a long time before I actually cut my hair. I had fairly long hair. Once I cut my hair, I was banned from every pub that I used to go into overnight. I was also banned, thrown out of a supermarket for looking the way I do. That's just for having a haircut. Now that was a strong reaction from the public. When you got it tattooed across your face, when you got skinheads in the middle of your, which is
or worse, when you got it tattooed inside your lip. So if you pull your bottom lip down, it
but then
skins.
no people, that's in the book. People don't see that on the street. But if you got it across your forehead, people will see that on the street, and the people react to it in a very strong way. And you can't get rid of it. And although you acquired it in the same way that you might acquire a new pair of boots because it only costs $5 or whatever.
Yeah,
you're stuck with it, so it no longer becomes a throwaway fashion. No longer does it become something you can grow out of. And you can't, it's very hard to admit to yourself that you actually made a mistake, and you're stuck with it, so you have to find new reasons to justify having skinheads tattooed in the middle of your face.
Well, you said there's make a mistake.
Sorry?
You said you can't admit to having made a mistake. You're implying that, like Jim said, you could be a skinhead, throw it away, it's just a passing phase.
But no,
Don't
it's
take it
part
too seriously.
of...
And one day you turn it around and say, now, if you've got skins tattooed on your forehead, you're probably going to be a hooligan for the rest of your life because you made that mistake.
Not a hooligan for the rest of your life, but you're certainly going to be aware of what happened in your youth. I mean, I've said things when I was 14 and 16 I wouldn't dare repeat now because they're stupid, you know. Because when you're 14 and 16, you're not that bright. You haven't lived through as much as when you're, getting like right old age of 24. But if you're stuck with some relic of your youth or you're growing up and in a very prominent place like in the middle of your face, it does force you to adopt a very strange lifestyle.
You're not likely to get a job as an ITV newsreader or something.
Well, that's it. That's just the point.
You get a job on the radio, though.
Neither of us are trying to knock either what happened or what's happening now. What we tried to do and what I tried to do in the book is document it as well as I could. To try and say, oh look, this happened in 1977, 1967 this happened, and to try and get as much feeling in it. Not to blandly record it, as some photojournalists have done, but to try and passionately record what the whole skinhead thing was about. Not to criticise it, not to say, oh, the only real skinheads were the first ones, or not to say, oh, they were a bunch of whatever, it's the oi-oi lot that are good. What I've tried to do in the book is put forward what happened and what is happening now.
So you are, as art critics would say, they would say celebrating, now that you are, in a sense, celebrating the skinhead movement, but also you're saying take a more, I'd say a liberal standpoint. I don't think skinheads would like you to say that, but take a more understanding standpoint towards skinheads.
I think that's what
you're saying?
it
Don't prejudge them just because of the image that you've read in the press.
That's right, yeah.
Well, the original skinhead music that you'd hear in clubs was usually fairly obscure West Indian imports and so on, which was strange because they got that racist image that they'd be listening to so much black music and so on, which was soul, reggae,
they got a lot of the style from blacks anyway.
Yeah.
Short hair and
the dressing style,
all this acting about,
and even the dancing style, sort of moon
it was all
stomping.
black dancing, yeah.
Moon stomping wasn't part of it. Moon stomping's a crude mess up of. That's getting.
Well, look, you two, okay.
I mean, the dancing. Some of them were very good dancers, very agile dancers.
Okay, I'll leave old skins and young skins to sort this out, the style of skinhead, skinheadishness themselves. And we'll carry on with, before we go, with a skinhead record of today. It's from the latest Oi compilation, and it's Skin Graph playing Oi Oi music.
I'm All your music, force of true. All your music, force of you. All your music, force of true.
Well, that was Oi Oi Music by Skingraft from the last Oi album, which was called, I think, Oi Oi, That's Your Lot, and that's some music for skinheads, and the book about the sort of skinhead cult, published by Omnibus Press. Well, once again I'm in an art gallery, and once again it's the Graffiti Gallery. We were here about 6 weeks ago.